Hello, Biology 202 students. Today we will be exploring the intricate and powerful female reproductive system, a marvel of biological engineering that does far more than support reproduction. While this system is indeed essential for the creation and nurturing of new life, its significance expands far beyond that. The female reproductive system is a cornerstone of a woman's overall health, influencing hormonal balance, emotional well-being, and sexual vitality. It plays a critical role in maintaining the body's equilibrium through the production of hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which are vital for everything from bone health to mood regulation. Additionally, the system is central in a woman's sexual health, contributing to the experiences of pleasure and intimacy that are fundamental aspects of human life. As we delve into its functions, let us recognize and appreciate the incredible power and complexity of the female reproductive system. As we move forward in our discussion, it is important to acknowledge that the subject matter we are addressing, particularly the anatomy and function of sexual organs, can be deeply personal and sensitive. Each individual's relationship with their body is unique, and discussions around reproductive health and sexual organs can evoke a range of emotions and thoughts. It is essential to approach this topic with respect and understanding, recognizing the personal nature of these discussions. Our goal is to foster an environment of learning that is both informative and supportive, where we can explore these complex and critical aspects of human biology with the dignity they deserve. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or have concerns, please feel free to engage with the material in any way that best supports your learning and well-being. For today's agenda, we will go over the functions of the female reproductive system, followed by the external and internal anatomies. Then we will cover the ovary and talk about its functions and histology, after which we will talk about the uterus and its histology. Then we'll talk about the ovarian cycle and menstrual cycle. We'll touch on the mammary glands and their histology, and then we'll talk about fertilization and implantation, and some complications that can arise in the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system is an extraordinary network of organs that play a vital role in sustaining life and nurturing new humans. It is responsible for producing key hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which regulate not only reproductive processes, but also influences overall health and well-being. Through the intricate process of oogenesis and ovulation, the system generates and releases eggs, essential for conception. This is an exocrine function. Furthermore, it supports the miraculous journey of fertilization, pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding, ensuring the growth, birth, and nourishment of new life. This remarkable system is a testament to the strength, resilience, and power of the female body. So remember, endocrine and exocrine. This has been echoed many times this year, and you should know now that endocrine means it's going into the blood. So that's the hormones, estrogen and progesterone in the blood. Then exocrine functions are leaving the body. So we have the gamete production, because those gametes will be leaving the body, but also breastfeeding releases milk. So that's also exocrine. The external genitalia share notable homologies between the sexes, reflecting their common embryonic origins. For instance, the clitoris in females is homologous to the glans penis in males. Both arise from the same tissue during development. Similarly, the labia majora in females are homologous to the scrotum in males. These shared origins mean that while there are general anatomical patterns, the development of these structures can vary widely from person to person, resulting in unique physical characteristics for everyone. Additionally, some individuals may be born with intersex variations, where their anatomy doesn't fit typical definitions of male or female. These natural variations further highlight the diversity of human bodies, emphasizing that every individual's anatomy is distinct and valid. The external anatomy of the female reproductive system, collectively known as the vulva, includes several structures that play key roles in protection, pleasure, and reproductive function. The mons pubis, a fatty tissue layer, cushions the pubic symphysis, while the labia majora, right here, and labia minora protect the internal genitals and helps maintain moisture and hygiene. The clitoris, rich in nerve endings, is a highly sensitive structure that contributes to sexual arousal and pleasure. Additionally, the hymen, a thin piece of non-keratinized tissue that surrounds the vaginal opening, may provide a protective barrier against infections during childhood. The hymen naturally thins through puberty and can tear from tampons, pelvic exams, and or intercourse, to name a few. A little known fact about the clitoris is that it expands deeper into the tissue, into the corpus cavernosa, which is also sensitive. So here's an interesting illustration that shows this true form of the clitoris and the corpus cavernosum. We also have the urethral opening right here, and Bartholin's glands down here. And these have ducts that secrete the mucus that protects and lubricates the vagina. I nearly forgot to mention that there is also a prepuce. Just like the male reproductive system, there is a foreskin associated with the female reproductive system. And just like the prepuce in men, this prepuce also covers a glans, but this is the glans clitoris. Next, we'll talk about the internal structures of the female reproductive system. Let's start with the ovaries, which are where eggs are produced and hormones like estrogen and progesterone are made. The ovaries are also the target organ for two other hormones. Let's see if you can figure that out. We will cover it later, but try figuring that out. So when an egg is released, this is called ovulation, it enters the infundibulum. This is a funnel-shaped opening of the fallopian tubes. This tube is lined with small finger-like projections called fimbriae, which help guide the egg. The egg then travels through the ampulla, the widest part of the tube, where fertilization often occurs. It continues its journey through the isthmus, a narrower section before reaching the uterus. The uterus is a strong muscular organ designed to support pregnancy and childbirth. It has three important layers. The innermost layer is the endometrium, which thickens each month in preparation for a possible pregnancy. If fertilization doesn't occur, this lining sheds during menstruation. The middle layer, called the myometrium, is made of powerful muscles that contracts during labor to help deliver babies. It can also contract when it's cramping. Menstrual cramps are extremely painful, and they can also involve multiple muscles from the back and abdomens and pelvic floor. The outer layer, known as the perimetrium, acts as a protective covering for the uterus. The uterus is located in the pelvic cavity, between the bladder and the rectum. During pregnancy, as the uterus expands to accommodate the growing baby, it can put pressure on the surrounding organs. This is why many pregnant women experience increased urination, back pain, or discomfort as the baby grows. The cervix, which connects the uterus to the vagina, plays a critical role during pregnancy and childbirth, remaining closed to protect the developing baby and then dilating during labor. This is also where pap smears happen. Females will get a pelvic exam, and if it is appropriate, the healthcare provider will perform a pap smear, which scrapes some cells off of the cervix and is tested for human papillomavirus. Human papillomavirus is the leading cause of cervical cancer, and it is also the most preventable form of cancer from a vaccine. Finally, the uterus and ovaries are held in place by various ligaments. So there is the ovarian ligament here, which attaches the ovary to the uterus. And then we have our suspensory ligament and our broad ligament here. So make sure you know where these are. We have our vagina here and our cervix here. The cervix is also where sperm have to travel through to make it to fertilize an egg. Then we have this area called the uterine isthmus and the fundus of the uterus here. Here is another view of the internal anatomy. See if you can call out some of these structures. Feel free to pause the video and study. The ovaries are small, almond-shaped organs located on either side of the uterus. They play a key role in both reproduction and hormone production. Measuring just 3 to 4 centimeters, these glands produce eggs, the female gametes, through a process called oogenesis. 2 important hormones, luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, target the ovaries. Follicle-stimulating hormone stimulates the growth of primordial follicles, which are the earliest stage of follicles found in the ovaries. As these follicles develop, they become primary follicles and then secondary follicles. Eventually, one follicle matures into a Gaffion's follicle, which is ready to release an egg during ovulation. Luteinizing hormone is responsible for triggering ovulation, the process where this mature egg is released from the follicle. After the egg is released, the ruptured follicle transforms into a structure called the corpus luteum. This temporary structure is essential because it produces progesterone, a hormone needed to support a potential pregnancy. If pregnancy does not occur, the corpus luteum will not receive the hormones it needs, and it will eventually break down into the corpus albicans, a small scar tissue. The ovary itself has 2 main parts, the cortex and the medulla. The cortex is where oogenesis, or egg production, occurs. The medulla, which contains a rich network of blood vessels, provides essential nutrients and support to the ovaries as they perform their functions. A kind of fun fact is that each woman is born with a set number of primordial follicles, and each month that number goes down as long as you're ovulating. This is a histology image of an ovary, and you can see a few structures here. We can see a bunch of primordial follicles, and those follicles have a developing ring around them. You can see here on the primary follicle a nice circumference of cells. Those are called granulosa cells, and those help support the follicle. Something you're not seeing in the histology image is the antrum. The antrum is, you can see on this image to the left, this what looks like a pool of fluid, and that supports the oocyte as well. You can see the cortical stroma out here, so this is the cortex out here, and we can't really see the medulla, but it has a bunch of blood vessels. On this image, we also do not see any secondary and mature oocytes, but you will be able to find one in lab. Here is another image you can use to study. This is labeled and it goes into a lot of details, so feel free to review these. The histology of the uterus reveals its complex structure, which is essential for its function. The uterine wall consists of 3 layers: the outer perimetrium, a protective layer of connective tissue; the middle myometrium, composed of thick, smooth muscle fibers that contract during childbirth; and the inner endometrium, which is the most dynamic layer. The endometrium itself has 2 layers: the basal layer, which provides the foundation for regeneration, and the functional layer, which thickens during the menstrual cycle and is shed during menstruation. The endometrium also contains uterine glands and blood vessels that change throughout the cycle, preparing the uterus for potential pregnancy. The ovarian cycle is a sequence of events in the ovaries that correspond with the menstrual cycle and are crucial for reproduction. This cycle is divided into three main phases: the menstrual phase, the pre-ovulatory phase or follicular phase, and the luteal phase, with a premenstrual phase at the end of the luteal phase. The menstrual phase, this is the phase that begins on the first day of menstruation, during which the functional layer of the endometrium is shed. During this time, levels of both luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone are relatively low, but follicle-stimulating hormone begins to rise slightly, stimulating the development of several ovarian follicles. Then we have the pre-ovulatory or follicular phase. As follicle-stimulating hormone levels continue to rise, a few ovarian follicles start to mature, but typically only one follicle becomes dominant. The maturing follicle secretes increasing amounts of estrogen, which prepares the endometrium for potential pregnancy. Estrogen also has a feedback effect on the pituitary gland, initially reducing follicle-stimulating hormone secretion and leading to a surge in luteinizing hormone. This luteinizing hormone surge triggers ovulation around the middle of the cycle, causing the dominant follicle to release its egg. Then we get the luteal phase. After ovulation, the remaining follicle cells transform into the corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone and some estrogen. These hormones maintain the thickness of the endometrium, preparing it for the implantation of a fertilized egg. During this phase, luteinizing hormone in red and follicle-stimulating hormone in blue levels decline as they are inhibited by the high levels of progesterone and estrogen. Lastly, we have the premenstrual phase. If fertilization and implantation do not occur, the corpus luteum degenerates into the corpus albicans, leading to a sharp drop in progesterone and estrogen levels. This hormone decline causes the endometrium to break down, marking the beginning of the menstrual phase once again. Throughout these phases, the coordinated secretion of gonadotropins, luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, and ovarian hormones, estrogen and progesterone, ensures the preparation of the ovaries and uterus for potential pregnancy each cycle. So we won't go over all of that again, but I want you to see what happens with these two hormones from the ovary and how they influence the endometrium. Estrogen has this peak here in yellow, and progesterone has this peak here in purple. Higher estrogen thickens the lining of the uterus, and progesterone makes the endometrium even thicker, more vascular, and glandular, creating a nutrient-rich environment sustainable for embryo implantation. If no fertilization occurs, then the corpus luteum degenerates, leading to a sharp decline in progesterone and estrogen levels. This hormone drop causes spiral arteries in the endometrium to constrict, leading to ischemia, the lack of blood flow, and the breakdown of the functional layer. This tissue then sloughs off, and we get menstrual fluid and menses, or the period. All right, so this is the whole diagram, and you can see day 0 all the way to day 28. So this is a 28-day cycle. The cycle starts with the menstrual phase, days 1 through 5, where low levels of estrogen and progesterone cause the endometrium, the uterine lining, to shed, leading to menstruation. Next is the proliferative phase, days 6 through 14. During this time, rising estrogen levels from the maturing follicle stimulate the endometrium to thicken and prepare for a potential pregnancy. Around day 14, a surge of luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation, releasing the egg from the ovary. The luteal phase, also known as the secretory phase, follows from days 15 to 28. During this phase, the corpus luteum, which forms from the ruptured follicle, produces progesterone. This hormone helps maintain the thickened endometrium, making it ready for a possible implantation of a fertilized egg. If fertilization doesn't occur, the corpus luteum breaks down, leading to a drop in progesterone and estrogen levels. This hormone decline causes the endometrium to break down, initiating the start of a new menstrual cycle. Fertilization begins when a sperm successfully penetrates an unfertilized egg in the fallopian tube, typically within the ampulla, the widest part of the tube. Once the sperm enters the egg, the two nuclei fuse, forming a single-cell zygote. This zygote then begins a process called cleavage, where it undergoes rapid mitotic cell division. Initially, the zygote divides into 2 cells, then 4, and continues dividing to form a morula, a solid ball of cells. As the cells continue to divide, they begin to differentiate and form a fluid-filled cavity, transforming the morula into a blastocyst. The blastocyst, now composed of an inner cell mass, which will develop into the embryo, and an outer layer of cells called the trophoblast, which will form part of the placenta. This travels down the fallopian tube towards the uterus. Around 5 to 7 days after fertilization, the blastocyst reaches the uterus and begins the process of implantation. During implantation, the blastocyst embeds itself into the endometrium, the uterine lining. This is where the developing embryo will continue to grow and develop, drawing nutrients from the mother's body from the placenta, which forms shortly after implantation. Endometriosis is a chronic and often painful condition where tissue that is found in the endometrium begins to grow outside the uterus. This misplaced tissue can be found on the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and outer surfaces of the uterus, and other organs within the pelvis, like the bladder. Each menstrual cycle, this tissue responds to hormonal changes just like the uterine lining, thickening, breaking down, and bleeding. However, unlike the endometrium inside the uterus, this blood has no way to exit the body, leading to inflammation, scar tissue, and adhesion, which can cause severe pain, especially during menstruation. Endometriosis can also result in fertility problems, and its symptoms can vary widely, ranging from mild discomfort to debilitating pain. Although the exact cause of endometriosis is not fully understood, it is believed to involve a combination of genetic, hormonal, and immune system factors. Treatment options typically focus on managing symptoms and improving quality of life, often through medications, hormone therapy, and/or surgery. The mammary glands are specialized exocrine glands located within the breasts, responsible for producing and secreting milk to nourish a newborn. Each mammary gland consists of 15 to 20 lobes, which are further divided into smaller lobules. These lobules contain clusters of alveoli, where milk is produced by cuboidal epithelial cells. The milk is then transported through a network of ducts that converge into larger lactiferous ducts, which open at the nipple. So look here, we have our gland lobules, and our large lobes, and our lactiferous duct here, and this opens up into a lactiferous sinus, and then we get the nipple. Surrounding the nipple is the areola, a pigmented area that contains areolar glands, which help lubricate and protect the skin during breastfeeding. The production of milk is stimulated by the hormone prolactin, while the release of milk is triggered by oxytocin, which causes the surrounding myoepithelial cells to contract and expel the milk. These glands are supported by connective tissue and suspensory ligaments that help maintain the structure of the breast. And as always, thank you so much for your time. Make sure you check the syllabus for due dates, and I'll see you around.